National Alliance on Mental Health Northern Illinois chapter collaborates with city leaders to establish Rockford as a stigma-free community when it comes to mental health.
23 News reporter Anthony Ferretti tells us more about the initiative and talks with NAMI volunteers about the impact the organization's had on her family.
Experts say people nationwide feel reluctant to talk about mental health, and that is one reason why the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Rockford, known as NAMI, started 40 years ago to break this stigma.
I got involved because there was something wrong with our adult son.
1 in 5 adults in the United States experience mental illness each year. For NAMI Northern Illinois volunteer Eileen Herring, it was her son.
We learned that it wasn't our fault, but he blames us. But that's part of mental illness. We had to educate our other family members, and he does not come to family gatherings. That's the most difficult part.
She participated in NAMI's family-to-family program that provides strategies to care for someone with a mental illness and show people struggling they're not alone.
We learned how to talk to our son and to help him and not get him aggravated.
A key part of dealing with mental illness is breaking the stigma. That's why NAMI and Leadership Rockford launch a stigma-free community pledge, a commitment people and organizations make to create an accepting culture when it comes to understanding mental health and dealing with trauma.
It's not just NAMI itself, but we bring the community together to respond to these sort of tragedies.
Dozens of people and organizations already stand behind this pledge.
No one's embarrassed to say, oh, I had the flu, or, I have allergies. Why can't we treat mental illness that same way?
Family to Family is one mental health education program offered by NAMI Northern Illinois. There's also Basics on Demand, a class for parents or guardians who care for someone up to 22 years old with mental health symptoms.
Thank you, Anthony. And NAMI also offers presentations and support groups, including Group Hope, a lifeline to understand mental illness and be understood.